Welcome to the Music for the Soul podcast, where we talk honestly about difficult things. This is a place where music, hope, and healing come together. I'm Becky Nordquist.
And I'm Steve Seiler. Today, we are delighted to have a couple with us, Jeff and Linda Crossan. Linda is a graphic artist and illustrator, and that has included animation work and graphic design for the entertainment industry and for the garment industry and for general advertising and design. Jeff is a songwriter and an author. Thank you so much, you guys, for being with us today.
Yes, welcome.
Glad to be here.
Well, I'm going to start with Linda, if that's okay, Jeff.
That's fine.
All right. Well, the reason I want to do that is because Linda designed our logo. So even those of you who have never heard her speak or don't know anything about her have been looking at her work every time you log on to the Music for the Soul podcast. So, Linda, I would like to ask you what the elements in the logo represent, how you came to this particular image, what inspired you?
Well, I love logo design, by the way. It's one of my favorite things to do. And so when I approach a new project, I always do pretty much the same thing by researching, talking to the person that I'm creating the logo for, whether it be a company or an individual, to find out what is the essence of what this logo has to say or be. And my job is to visually say that because the words already exist. I'm only trying to marry the words with an image, a visual image that can say the same thing that the words say, but without the words, so that it's easily recognizable. Oh, yes, when you read the words, the two marry and look right. So I remember having a conversation with you, Steve, about it. And then I went back and started thinking about the whole thing and what would be the essence of Music for the Soul. I have a deep faith in God and have done a lot of liturgical art as well. And so had enough prior experience with trying to say things in a spiritual way that I felt like focusing on the light of God, and that the light is hopefully coming through the song to the person in that moment when that light in the song touches your soul is the moment that I was trying to capture. So then translating that into a simplified thing, because when you do logo design, you want it to be a quick recognition, not a, what is that thing?
Right.
So the burst at the top within a dark box, the burst it stands for the light that, we hope is coming into your soul when you listen to songs by Music for the Soul, and whatever the need is, that the logo is supposed to help you understand that. And so as I was looking back at it, because it's been a while since I designed it, when I was first, I was like, wait, why did I do that? I had to think about it for a while, but, having worked in advertising for so many years, I can pretty much justify things. You have the ability to do that because, we always have to sell it to the client.
I've had that same experience, Linda, with somebody asking why I wrote a song and thinking, let's see if I can pull something out of thin air that justifies the existence of this song.
Listen, yes, I've watched lots of art directors do that, and I've been amazed. Wow, I never thought about it that way, but so
I got to tell you, my favorite story, one of my favorite stories working in CCM was I had co-written a song with a recording artist, and he wasn't in the room when I came up with the idea. And Jeff, you know about this, I brought the idea to the session. And basically, and I don't mean to disparage, he's a great singer, wonderful guy, but he basically watched me write it. And then I got to hear him on a radio show where the interviewer asked him what inspired him to write the song, and got to listen to his make-believe answer. And I just smiled and I thought, you know what? he has to own the song and go out and sing it every night. I don't. So that's fine. Whatever.
And that's actually one of the reasons why I love abstract art is because I create something that is abstracted enough that then a person can come and look at it and they will be able to get what they need out of it.
Right.
I have not defined it so far that they can't interpret in their own way. And
Yes.
That's always the most exciting thing to me, is the idea that someone will come up and connect in a way that I never thought could happen.
I love that for so many reasons, because art evokes so much emotion and it draws things out of you. And visual art is so very different than music art, and yet they're very much alike, right? I'm just curious. So when did you know that art was your gig? Like, did you know early on, and how did it start? Can you kind of share that with us?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I always have loved to draw and to color. I was always very conscious of the food, the color of the food on my plate when I was a kid. And when my mother would serve a meal that was mostly yellow or mostly white or whatever, I would always go, "Where's the rest of the colors?" That's great.
That's funny. No monochromatic meals, right?
Yeah. But and so I was fortunate enough to go through school in a time when art was a part of, an important part of our education. And I feel like I had to fight really hard to make sure that my kids, who are very creative, were, getting that in their education as well. But, I had art all through school. And so in high school, for instance, my art classes, I took two back-to-back classes because I really loved art a lot. But I had other kids in my class, several, in fact, who I thought were way better artists than me. And no one in my high school, none of the guidance counselors ever suggested to us that there was a career path for an artist in the graphic world. I knew nothing about that. And so my first job was as a dental assistant. But when we moved to California, a dear friend of ours knew I was an artist, and he encouraged me to do art instead. And I ended up working in animation and ink and paint, worked on Saturday morning cartoons, and then from there did all kinds of other kind of artistic things, that were graphic in nature. But I really didn't call myself artist until it was before the kids were born, I think, when I started really thinking of myself that way, but not thinking that I was talented enough to be able to, have a job at that. I did some spiritual formation programs, and the discernment process in that, God really spoke to me and said, "You need to be doing art for me and with me." And so my opportunities, I actually got to paint in worship services.
Yes.
Which
I've been there for that.
Early on, and I stood up there in the worship service and painted to music, that was going on at the Christ Cathedral in downtown Nashville, which is this gorgeous sanctuary. And I felt like I lost myself in it. I did not. I mean, afterwards, this is really kind of funny. I was doing a painting of the Transfiguration where, Jesus goes up on the mountain with, the disciples, and he's revealed as God's son. And I had painted these big canvases, 3 panels, 5 feet tall by 4 feet wide. So combined, they were huge. And I painted the light of Christ on this background of Mount Sinai, or whatever the mountain is. It's actually not Sinai. It's something else. Starts with a T. I can't remember now. But afterwards, this woman came up to me and she said, "Do you know you were painting to the beat of the music?" And I was like, "No, I had no idea." So, that's really, when I started realizing I still have trouble with thinking of myself sometimes as an artist because of Leonardo da Vinci and all these other masters that I don't think I'm at that level. But
you're making me think, Linda, of the thing that you have on your wall in your studio. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offerings. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in.
yes, that's Leonard Cohen. It came from a song.
Yeah. And what I love about that, as you're talking about not thinking you're talented enough, that whole idea is dismiss this idea that you have to be perfect.
Exactly.
Share what God gives you to give.
Yes, right. And now I'm doing ceramic work mostly. And in the process of creating things with clay, there's this need to step out of the way. And so many times I'll sit down at my wheel to throw a specific thing, and the clay says, "Oh no, that's not what I am. I need to do this instead." And so I'm very purposeful about making the space and having the ability to change direction within the process to allow the thing to be what it needs to be. And
wow, there's so much there in what you just said. Oh my goodness. Well, what you had me at was, that you're into that, because that is actually on my bucket list to do some pottery and learn how to throw clay and stuff. And I just,
it's really kind of amazing to me, the whole way I came back, because I learned clay in high school. We had a potter's wheel and a kiln in our classroom, and I loved clay. And then I had to go to work and get a job, and so I kind of lost track of that. And for several times in my life, I've set art aside because of raising children, being all that kind of thing. So John, our son, went to Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, Florida. The guy who's the head of their art department there is a potter. And so John took this class making musical instruments out of clay and learned how to make flutes and ocarinas and these double-chambered vessels that you pour water in one side of it, and then when you tip it, it pushes air through the other side and it makes a sound.
Incredible.
Wow.
And they're ancient. They've been unearthed in China and South America, and they were thought to be used in spiritual practice with, in ancient civilizations. And so, I decided that after he came back, because he seemed to really love clay, that I wanted to be able to connect with him. And so we went out to Mid-South Ceramics and took classes together. And I just was so not prepared for how obsessed I became with doing ceramics. I was moving toward three-dimensional art. We did this Stations of the Cross art.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Every year at Second, and I would get artists to come and interpret one of the scriptural stations, and that was a part of our Easter tradition of starting with, I guess it started on Palm Sunday, and then you could walk the stations as a part of your Easter time. And I just felt myself moving more in doing collage, doing mixed media stuff that was more three-dimensional looking. And so pottery just became this perfect place to go. And then I was so surprised at how obsessed I became with it. But then I looked around my house and I have collected McCoy and Roseville and all these mid-century pottery pieces. And I thought, hello, this is really who I am. This is
forest for the trees there, Linda.
Yeah.
But can I just say that you do a beautiful job with your...
Well, you're very kind. Thank you very much.
Later on, we'll give people your place where they can go and check it out, because it's you folks will enjoy seeing the beautiful things that Linda creates.
Yeah, now I'm firing with propane and in a small kiln that when you it's dangerous, but it's so exciting. So,
well, you're reminding me of my own escapades in the art world. In middle school, I took a bleach bottle and covered it with paper mache, and named it after the teacher. Her name was Guinevere Matucka. So I named my piece, I hung it from the ceiling and I named my piece The Flying Matucka. That was my one and only venture into the art world.
Yeah.
You don't want me in the art world. No.
Oh, listen, you know what? If you think about, there's this great book by Dr. Betty Edwards, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain.
Mm-hmm.
Every child is born with a perfect sense of composition.
Wow.
She came up with these interesting ways of flipping something upside down and making you draw it upside down so that your brain is disconnected from what the thing really is. And then you can look at the shapes and copy the shapes. And, you know, it's a great method.
It was we used that book in homeschooling, actually.
Oh, you did?
We did. And we used a lot of those methods. And so if you're a homeschooler out there, it's a great book to pick up and implement into your curriculum. It's really, and both of my younger kids are very artsy in ways. So, but I mean, I don't know about you, but do you find that working with your hands, it just offers another level of almost therapy?
Oh, no question. And, you know, now that I'm working with clay and I repurpose my clay, I don't throw it away. And so that means that it has to be re-wet, and then you have to let it sit for a while so that then you can bring it out and knead it, get it back into the proper shape for you to be able to throw with it again.
And so much spiritual connotation there, like parallels there. As I'm listening to you talk and I'm going, oh my goodness. No wonder.
A lot of amazing scripture references in the Bible about who the potter is and who's the clay.
You can see why that you can just visualize it better.
Yeah, because you take a lump and then you make it into this thing.
And then they're repurposing. I'm listening to that. I'm like, oh, I want to cry thinking about how often are we repurposed, right? So
yeah. So I know I one of the things I think that I'm careful about who I say this to because people will think I'm nuts, but I do believe that the clay has its own spirit and that it wants to, you know, I help it come into being, but that like I said earlier, I have to allow, you know, space for it to become what it wants to be, not what I want it to be.
I feel that way about my hair sometimes because I have curly hair, and sometimes the curls just want to go a certain way and I don't fight it. You be the curl you need to be today. I totally get what you mean. That was so corny. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's good.
I don't know where that came from.
Linda, it's time for you to share how one of Jeff's songs dramatically changed your life, and that'll help us segue into getting some stories out of Jeff.
Well, Jeff, we were living in California, and he was working for Cashbox magazine, but coming home at night, and we always had an extra room that was a writing room for him. And he was very diligent about going in there and working, even though, you know, he might be tired from working all day at a different job. But he wrote a song called You're Gonna Ruin My Bad Reputation. And Ronnie McDowell recorded it, and it became a #1 hit for him. And it was the #2 song of the year. And I'll let him talk about who kept him from being #1 if he wants to. But
how did it change your life?
Well, it changed my life because once it became a big hit, we decided that we needed to move to Nashville, that it would be smarter to be there so that he could, you know, further his career. And I was working at Disney at the time, had a great job working on the Disney Channel staff. I was responsible for creating the things that the kids could do that were interactive in the Disney Channel guide that was mailed out every month. So I got to make paper dolls, and I drew Mickey until they found out I was drawing Mickey, and then said, no, nobody's allowed to draw Mickey but this one person. So then we had to ask them to draw him if I didn't have him in a specific pose for something. So that meant we had to move to Nashville, and I didn't know anybody. but advertising is pretty much everywhere. So I ended up in a design studio that did traditional advertising. And then later I got a job in the garment industry doing T-shirt designs for Levi's.
When Jeff, Linda mentioned the Cashbox thing, but I know that you came to that through another job. Tell us where you started out and how that all led to a songwriting career.
Well, I was a journalism major in college at the University of Richmond. And when I graduated, I took a job at a small newspaper in Delaware. And I was there, I guess, a couple of years and got serious about songwriting and decided I was going to have to move to one of the three, song centers, New York or Nashville or LA. Didn't want to move to New York. I didn't really know anybody in Nashville, but I had a good friend in California. So we moved to California and I went to work for Cashbox. Cashbox had a Nashville office. I realized that the kind of songs I was writing were definitely more Nashville than they weren't pop songs. So I started making trips to Nashville, and it paid off with them. You're going to ruin my bad reputation. Cut it, Tree Publishing, and they signed me as a staff writer. So that was when I decided, well, if I'm really going to do this, we're going to have to move to Nashville.
Well, so number one on the country charts, that's a big stinky deal. And I have to say, known you for a long time, and I knew you were a successful country songwriter, but I never knew you were at the top of the mountain.
Well, Steve, that was such a bizarre thing because it was the first song I ever had recorded. And Buddy Killen, who owned Tree Publishing and who produced that record, and I sent the song in the mail to. He said, we have never had anybody send a song in the mail that has gone on to become a number one record, or even, I don't even know whether they've had one that had become single, but, became a number one record. And then I had the follow up, which was You May Have Wanted Me, and me also by Ronnie McDowell, that went to number 3. So, I mean, we figured we better get there and packed our bags and came. Worked out well.
That's a great
So
story.
I gotta know. I gotta know. So then somebody beat you out for Song of the Year.
Yes. In fact, it was just on the TV this morning. There's some kind of dance thing going on TikTok or something for Islands in the Stream, which was a Bee Gees, written, and it was Kenny Rogers and
Dolly. Yep.
And I think, really, I don't consider that a country song. So I think I really had the number one country song.
Right. Yeah, because there are those like, this is real country or it's wannabe country.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Islands in the Stream aced me out.
Well, it helps when you have a couple of living legends do a song to kind of elevate it. Although I must say that has always been one of my least favorite hit songs, Islands in the Stream.
Well, you won't be doing the dance thing then on TikTok along with that.
No, I won't. Nobody
Although I'd really like to see that.
No.
Actually,
I could.
really sweet when you see these, it's couples in their kitchen, and what the whole premise is that you put the song on and the other person doesn't really know why you did it, and you try to entice them to come in and dance with you.
Uh-huh.
And so then you're looking at couples that are dancing in their kitchen, and it's sweet to watch, to see them doing it.
I think I might have to do this tonight.
Yeah, try it.
Well, we'll try it with you to ruin my bad reputation.
There you go.
Oh, hey, that's what we need to start. A new viral TikTok.
There you go.
There you go. We'll get that overturned yet, Jeff.
All right.
Well, tell our listeners about some of the other projects you've worked on, because you have a couple of really unique things that you've done. And our listeners, are all over the country. That some of them may not know what a cicada is. So as you share about that story, please let them know what you're talking about.
That was something that literally came out of the blue for me. I was going out to dinner with John and Sarah are our children. And at the same time, there was a cicada swarm. Cicadas are these large locust-like, I guess, insects that will bury underground, stay there for years, and then come up in swarms, and they fill the skies with their flight and their song, which is kind of a loud noise. But we were on the way into the restaurant, and one of these things dive bombed me out of the sky and hit me in the mouth. And my first response was to say, "Whoa, I almost ate a cicada," to John and Sarah. And of course, I'm a songwriter. So I thought, well, wait a minute, that's got something going for it. We went and sat down, and I pulled out, it was either a napkin or a piece of paper, and I just started having fun writing down any sort of insect, animal rhyme. I peppered a leopard, I thrilled a gorilla. John and Sarah were just kind of watching me, what is he doing? And then it snowballed, and I turned each one of those into a little verse. And I spent a couple of days doing this. I came up with, I think, 50 or 60 of these things. And then I thought, get a grip. What are you doing with this? What in the world? I'm trying to be a commercial country songwriter, writing songs about, I follow this swallow. This is not going to go anywhere. So I sort of just put it away and considered it a crazy diversion. And it wasn't until years later that I started drawing cartoons for the Presbyterian Voice. And I always drew as a kid too. And I was working on one of those cartoons one day, and I just thought, whoa, wait a minute. I could pull that crazy song out, whittle it down to a handful of verses, illustrate it, turn it into a children's book. So I started doing that, and I did it as ink drawings. That's really what I did. I didn't know anything about watercolor. Mm-hmm. So I said to Linda, I want you to watercolor these for me. And she did one or two of them. And you were busy doing other things, and I couldn't get her to come back to it. So I said, okay, show me how to watercolor. So she did, and I eventually finished it, and it came I Ate a Cicada Today, a children's book with a CD because it was a song. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether I even said that. Yeah, it's a song, and each song has a little spoken aside in it. So there are 16 of the 60 or so that I did. So it's a standard 32-page children's book.
So, is there any way for people to reach out to you and get the backstory, get the 40 verses that didn't make it into the book?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I could do I could do two.
Okay, I want you to recite my favorite verse.
I hit a giant squid today, which is normally sung, in a place where I figured he'd stay. He was hidden for an hour until Grandma went to shower. and then the spoken part is, Grandma said she hadn't been squeezed that tight since Grandpa came home from the war. I actually think it brought back some fond memories. I hit a giant squid today.
And the illustration is of this old clawfoot tub. Grandma's got her little slippers on and her shower cap, and she's leaning in to turn on the water. Mm. And in the back is this giant squid looking at her like, what are you doing? It's so cute.
Well, now that couldn't be much different than the project that you have upcoming on the poetry of Robert Frost. Tell our listeners about that.
That's another thing that just sort of happened. We were planning to go to New England to meet one of my best friends who was there for his high school reunion. And we decided, okay, I had never been in New England. Linda had spent quite a bit of time there as a child, but we were looking to see what other places of interest there would be. And I thought, oh, wow, in Hartford, there's Mark Twain's house. Big Mark Twain fan. So I, of course, wanted to go there. And we realized along the course of our drive, there was Linda found this, a Robert Frost home and museum. Big Robert Frost fan. And I thought, oh, wow, that is great. So the day before we left, I pulled out my Robert Frost book and I'm reading through it. And this was the house where he wrote Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, which is arguably just his best known poem. And I, looking at it, and my guitar was right over here. So I thought, let's just see, if I could do something with this. So I picked up the guitar and really, this melody just sort of rolled right out. And I thought, well, this is great. Tried another one and it worked well. So we went up there, went to the house. I was in the room where he had written it, and it's, up there on display on the wall, and I'm humming this melody, and I'm thinking, I could like this. And when I got home, again, this snowballed for me. But there was one Prayer in Spring. I was working on a CD project of my own songs at the time. When I wrote A Prayer in Spring, there were a lot of things in it that made me think, this belongs on this project that I'm working on. But what are the odds that, it would be public domain? So I explored that and found out that it had been published in 1923, and it was going into public domain in 2019. This was October of 2018.
Wow.
And I thought, well, this couldn't be timed better. So that ended up being the last song on this CD project that I put out. And then I just kept on again. I have 45 of those, but I recorded 15 of them with excellent musicians, say myself. And it's called For the Woods. And I have not released it because my first project, I just kind of threw out there without any promotion, and hence not all that many people know about it. I sent copies of it to music directors at radio stations, and it got airplay because I'll get a BMI statement and it will have, a title or two from that CD. Mm-hmm. But really, I don't know anything about. I tell people I'm Amish, and that's a disservice to the Amish because I don't go for social media. I'm not a tech person. I need somebody who knows how to work that, who can help me get a little momentum, get it out there. So I'm holding back on it. Meanwhile, I've gone ahead and started recording another Frost project, and I just love it. I mean, I'm a songwriter who has normally written by myself, and I'll start with a title or line of lyric, and I will write the lyric in tandem with the melody. This time, when I'm working with my co-writer, Robert Frost, I have these completed poems, and many of them actually fit a song format. So I've got a completed lyric there, and I pick up guitar. And in the case of these, they roll right out.
I'm just going to say that they are absolutely spectacular. I listen to them in the car all the time. They make me cry because they're so beautiful.
And, what I hope our listeners are hearing, because this is what I'm hearing, just the amount of creativity that has come out of the two of you and all the different ways that has been intertwined with your spiritual life and with your shared life experience. It just is such an encouraging word to creators out there to just take whatever God brings them and go for it. I mean, this is just a beautiful story on both sides.
And also what I'm thinking is don't corner yourself into one mode of art, even though it might be something that I recently was drawing with expo markers on my daughter's sliding door with my grandson. And I was laughing hysterically thinking, drawing is not my mode of art. But after a little bit, I'm like, this is pretty soothing. And then I was recalling actually some of the stuff from that book, the Right Side of the Brain book. I'm like, oh, what if I applied that here? And, because so often we're like, well, I'm just a songwriter. But creativity is so broad, isn't it? I mean, God, look
Oh,
at
yeah.
God's creativity. Oh my goodness. Talk about not being in a box or in a corner, right?
Well,
Yes.
I actually said this to a friend of ours when we were hiking just a few days ago. God is the greatest artist
Oh, yes.
ever.
Absolutely.
When you think about all the things, when you just walking around in nature and the different shapes and how many different kinds of flowers and leaves and
Yes.
animals and they're
Yes.
all incredible patterns. I mean, artists through the centuries have borrowed the patterning that God has put on all kinds of things, to create other art. So
intricate details, both in words and color and different modalities. Is that the word I want? Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
we had the privilege of having Jeff write a song. Well, actually, did you? I'm trying to remember, Jeff. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you write that song because I asked you, or did it already exist?
No, it did not exist. And in fact, I think I've mentioned this to you before. I was convinced I would never write a song because I became a caregiver for my father, and I was such for a little more than a year and a half. And when people in Delaware, where my dad lived, when we grew up, would find out that I was a songwriter, they would always say, well, this experience of being a caregiver is probably going to give you some good material for a song. And my thought always was, I don't think I'm going to be wanting to dip my bucket into that well, for song inspiration. I mean, it was a difficult time. I had to deal with a head wound. My dad had a skin cancer that after the radiation treatment, it would not heal. So he had an open wound and he needed to be dressed daily.
For more than 10 years, it was.
And my stepmother had been doing that. But when I got the call to come up to Delaware, she had been hospitalized. And by the time I got up there, they found out she had a terminal brain tumor. So she was no longer able to take care of the head wound. I took over being sort of a caregiver for her and for my dad. And I was also handling all the, financial stuff and the groceries. And when she died, I was her estate executor. And I was under a lot of stress, ended up with an ulcer. And so when people would say, I think you'll get a song, I think this is not up-tempo, positive love song, which is what Nashville was yearning for, and what as a songwriter, you tried to write. So then it was in 2011, I think, when you told me about the Dignity Project. And I guess you were familiar with the fact that I had been a caregiver, so you said to me one day at church, I've got this project. Can you give me any input on, what you think would be good material? I said, I don't even think I hesitate. I said, make sure you have something about the professional caregivers who help the family members because they are invaluable.
Yes.
I got choked up just thinking that.
Yeah.
But they help on so many levels. There's the physical level, which I needed when my father couldn't stand up. There's the medical level when I was having to change a wound that got worse. And then there's the emotional level where they're valuable. So anyway,
that's when I said, would you write it?
That's and if I remember correctly, I probably said, I'll think about it, because I didn't know, really whether I could or how I'd approach it. But when I sat down with a guitar, it was one of the easiest songs I've ever written because I did not have to make anything up.
Right. Right.
I just told the story. I mean, I had to put it in a song form. I had to make it rhyme, but I just told the story, top to bottom.
And it is such a touching piece. And we're gonna go out on that song today. But before we go out, I want to make sure that our listeners know how to get in touch with you guys, how to see your art, Linda, and how to hear your songs and find your books, Jeff. So could you each share your website or your best way for people to find that material?
Yeah, sure. Mine is Crows 3 Studio. There's a reference in there to the Trinity. And crows are symbolically an incredibly spiritual, very smart. They have the light. They have the light and the dark in them, which I think is important. So that's why I named it crows3studio.com.
And 3 is spelled out. It's not the number. It's the word. It's
all spelled out.
Okay.
So that's how you get me. I mean, I do have an Instagram, but I don't remember what it is. I'm trying really hard to do all that stuff too.
We'll let the 20-somethings find that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a link on the website to Instagram and stuff, I think. So,
how about you, Jeff?
I had to ask Linda what my contact info was. I think I am jcco.com. Is that correct?
Yeah.
For the music, my project is the one that I have released already. Is called The Far Ends by jcco at jcco.com. jcco is really just a scramble of my name. My middle name is Co, so I'm Jeff Co Crossan, but people do not get Crossan correct. It's usually Croissant that they want to
Crossman, Croissant,
Crossman, Carlson.
Yeah.
It is everything but Crossan. Even when I got my diploma, Jeffrey Crossan. So I thought I'll make it simple, make it Co. And then for the book, it is all one word. I ate a cicada today.com.
But you can also find JCCO on Spotify and all the different music.
All the streaming platforms. And the For the Woods, hopefully, will be out before too.
Yeah.
Well, that's very exciting. I certainly can't wait to give that one a listen as a Frost fan myself. And
great.
Thank you so much for being with us today. What a great time to be with you and talk about art and how good our God is and what a great artist he is and how therapeutic it is for all of us. If you enjoyed the discussion today, please share it with a friend and give us a positive review on iTunes.
And please visit our website, musicforthesoul.org, where you can stream or download every song in our catalog, including When I Couldn't Do It By Myself. Read our lyrics, our healing music guide, our blog posts, and much more. Thank you for listening. God bless.
My father could not stand alone. I couldn't lift him on my own. The time had finally come to make that call. They sent us James, a gentleman. I watched him shake my father's hand. An answer to a prayer is what I saw. When I couldn't do it by myself, when I knew I needed the strength of someone else, I was grateful to be blessed with two strong hands to help. When I couldn't do it by myself, it was hard for me to face the truth, to change the bandage, dress the wound. Sometimes I wasn't sure I'd done it right. When things went from bad to worse, hospice sent my dad a nurse. Her name was Marge, she was a welcome sight. When I couldn't do it by myself, When I knew I needed the skills of someone else, I was grateful to be blessed with 2 healing hands to help. When I couldn't do it by myself, James would sit with my dad and talk, give me the time to take a walk. Before too long he called my dad his buddy, and Marge sometimes brought ice cream and Springsteen CDs. We both were fans. When I need a laugh, she'd say something funny. Winter passed, Dad's voice grew weak. Spring arrived, he could hardly speak. One day in May, the sunset lit the sky. I held his hand, I let him go. The tears that fell weren't just my own. 3 of us were there to say goodbye. When I couldn't do it by myself, when I knew I needed the grace of someone else, I was grateful to be blessed with 2 loving hearts to help. When I couldn't do it by myself, I'm grateful to be blessed with the loving hearts that helped when I couldn't do it by myself.